with us today Deepak Chopra. Welcome, Deepak.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are speaking today on the topic of
Dying and living. Not living and
Okay.
dying, but dying and living.
Okay. So let me start with a very brief story. And the story is when I was maybe 6 years of age. And my little brother was then about 4. My brother went on to become the dean for education at Harvard Medical School. But I'm talking about a long time ago when he was 4 and I was 6. And we were staying with our grandparents because my father at that time was in England studying to be a cardiologist. And so one day we got a telegram from my father. Remember, this is a long time ago. We're speaking about almost, I'm 74 next month. So I was 6. So I was probably 64 years ago, okay, or something like that. So we got the telegram, and the telegram said that my father had passed all his exams. He was now a member of the Royal College of Physicians, which in those days was a big deal under British colonialism or post-colonialism. So my grandfather, who was an army sergeant in the First World War for the British Army, he went to the roof of the apartment building in Mumbai, it was called Bombay, and he fired some rounds from his rifle into the sky to celebrate his son's achievement. And then he took me and my brother to see a movie. I remember the name of the movie. It was Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. And then we went to a carnival. And then he took us to some little fancy restaurant. We came back home by about 9 o'clock. And then I remember waking up at around midnight, and I could hear the wailing of women in the house. And my grandfather died. In the middle of the night, he died. Probably out of excitement. I don't know how, but he died. And the 2 kids were taken to a neighbor's apartment. And the next day, they took him for cremation. And they brought his ashes back in a jar about this big. And one of my uncles looked at the jar and he said, what is a human being? Yesterday he was taking these kids to a carnival, a movie, and celebrating. And now he's a bunch of ashes right there in a jar. So I think I had my first existential crisis at the age of 6. I wondered if my grandfather was in the jar of ashes or where was he? I couldn't fathom it. My brother started to his skin started to peel. And my uncles, everybody took him to all the doctors that they could, and nobody could make a diagnosis. Till some healer said, he's feeling vulnerable because of grief and loss. He's missing his parents. And he'll be fine once this whole grief thing goes away. And so, sure enough, when my parents came back, he was totally fine. So that, I think, was my first indication of mind-body connection at that time, 6 years of age. Well, I went to medical school after that. And, in medical school, the first thing you experience is, the first lesson is anatomy. Anatomy means you go into a dissecting room and you dissect a corpse. So your introduction to medical school, and in fact life, professionally, is through death. You see a dead body. And so I became very familiar with both the immediacy of this experience that is happening all the time. Death is as frequent as birth is. I think they stay in tandem. Sometimes death is winning, sometimes birth is winning, but They're very immediate. And then I had other experiences. I came to the United States. I started working in the emergency room, etc., etc. So death was a constant presence in my entire career as a doctor. Entire career. Not one day where there is the absence of the reminder of death. Not one day. Even now, because I'm a physician, people call me. They say, I have cancer, my mother died, this, that. Every day, death is a reminder, every moment. Not only is that death a reminder every day, but also grief is a reminder every day. And grief right now is a pandemic globally. The one thing that the COVID-19 pandemic did very clearly, and although people aren't seeing it, is it made the entire planet suddenly aware of a very primal fear. And that's the primal fear of death, the whole planet right now. And what surprised me, it's actually surprised me because I've never missed a day not thinking about existence and also awareness of existence. So two things very important: existence and awareness of existence. Because if there is existence and no awareness of existence, then we don't know existence. And if we don't know existence, then we don't know life and we don't know death. So what the pandemic did is a very sudden reminder to humanity that we take existence for granted, when in fact we should be surprised that we exist. Why is there existence? So the great Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore, one of his earlier poems, he said, that I exist is a perpetual surprise. And I thought to myself when I read that, if you're not perpetually surprised by your existence, then your humanity is incomplete. And if you are taking it for granted, as we have, then our humanity is not complete. And so this pandemic reminded us that we are taking existence for granted. And when you take something for granted and you suddenly lose it, and we lost it. We lost a way of living. We lost a way of relating. We lost a way of taking our well-being for granted, or even our life for granted, till something happens. And then when something happens, then because we took it for granted, we are shocked, surprised, and we go into what is called grief. Now, as a physician, I've seen grief, and I've seen the stages of grief also. I know people have defined stages of grief, and I should say right in the beginning, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not even a scientist. I'm just a regular doctor who had experiences and then started to wonder about, the meaning of these experiences. And then my own spiritual practice, which is more important to me than any kind of philosophy or science or theory about consciousness or anything. That's, those are all inferential understandings of fundamental reality. But as a physician, I've seen grief, and I've seen grief go through different stages. I don't know if these are formal stages or not, but this is my experience. Even in 1 hour, when I see a patient who's got a heart attack and they know just from everything else happening, people are running around, people are asking for a pacemaker, ventilator, and there's an emergency, alarms are going on, and the patient knows that they're dying. They know. And they suddenly start experiencing stages of grief in a very quick way. So first they feel victimized. Why me? This is the first thing, victimization. Of course, if you think about it, everybody dies. So it's not why me? And right now the pandemic is reminding everybody that it's all of us. Okay, so that's the first stage. It's victimization. The second stage is anger, even hostility. as if this was something that should not have happened. How dare this happen? The third stage after anger and hostility is frustration. People feel very frustrated, and then suddenly they start to resign because they can't do anything. Frustration. They know they can't control the inevitable. And then they resign and they are helpless. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people die in the stage of helplessness, desperation, fear. And you can see it in their eyes, in the emergency room, you can see it in their eyes. Once in a while, I've seen something that we can call acceptance. Acceptance means there's no denial. This is what it is. Okay. Right now, for example, a lot of people are denying even the pandemic. Should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? When is the vaccine coming out? Etc. How will I get sick? What happens to my grandfather? What happens to my kids? This, that. Everybody is actually, in a way, in denial of what is. What is? There's a pandemic going on. People are dying all over the world. Okay, some are relatively protected, some are not, but there's a pandemic. There's a financial crisis. There's a stress epidemic going on. But all we are doing right now is saying, what's the immediate solution? Instead of saying, listen, whatever the solution is, and we obviously, every problem by definition has a solution. They come together. Like every question comes with an answer, and every answer presumes there's a question. So there are always solutions to human dilemmas, but those solutions don't lie in denial. Okay, you have to accept what is. So once you see acceptance in a dying patient, which I see once in a while, then I also see peace. It's a very interesting thing. Peace comes with acceptance. And then the final stage that comes is meaning. What does it mean? Okay, what does this whole experience mean? And I think right now, we're having this conversation because we are questioning the meaning, right, of existence, of life, and therefore of death as well. We are questioning what is the meaning. That's why we're having the conversation. And we're questioning the meaning because you also accept the fact. If you don't accept the fact, there's no questioning the meaning. And once you accept the fact, then you have to go a little deeper, okay? And that's been my quest all my life. The meaning of death is tied to the meaning of life, is tied to the meaning of birth, is tied to the meaning of existence. So now getting to a little bit of reflective inquiry on this, I think one can approach this problem, if you want to call it a problem, of death, through a sequential inquiry on existence. So we can deny the existence of anything. If I say, I saw a rainbow, and you're standing in a different location, and you say, no, I don't see the rainbow. I can say that's my experience, a rainbow, and you don't see the rainbow, so that's your experience of the rainbow. And we can deny the existence of ideas. This is a false idea, this is a right idea. And we argue, we debate on the existence of certain things. Does this microphone exist by itself in the absence of an observer? I don't know. I know this microphone as a perceptual experience and a human perceptual experience, not the experience of an insect with 100 eyes. So we can even argue whether this is an object or this is a perceptual activity. Okay, we can argue whether the human body is a noun or a verb. We can argue about anything, but we cannot argue about one thing, and that is there is existence. Whatever shape, form it takes, we cannot say there is no such thing as existence, right? There is existence. Now we have to go deeper. What does that mean? What is existence? What is existence? How does anyone know existence? How does anyone know existence? And the only way we can know existence is through an experience of existence. And what we experience, if we really try and figure this out, is not existence. We experience symbols of experience. So what we call the physical body is a symbolic representation of a changing experience, Because what we call the physical body at one time was a fertilized egg. Then it was a zygote. Then it was an embryo. Then it was a baby. Then it was an infant. Then it was a child. Then it was a toddler or whatever, teenager, adult, etc., old person, and now gone. So, we see a storyline. The storyline is fertilized egg, and then all the way through death, what we call death. That's the storyline of what? Of experience. How do we know that there is such a thing as an embryo? How do we know there's such a thing as a baby or this? And who knows? What is it that knows that experience? Okay, but we can say there's an experience of something that's changing. And that something that's changing is, we call it a body. That's a human name for this changing experience, which is essentially a changing experience of what I would say a qualia matrix given a storyline. And by qualia, since we have these conferences, people endlessly talk about, how do you get the experience of a qualia? How do you get the experience of the smell of garlic or the taste of wine or the bitter sweetness of the experience of love? And how do atoms and molecules and brain activity produce this experience? And of course, we call this the hard problem, not realizing that even the atoms and molecules and the brain that we talk about as producing this experience are also experiences, okay? What we call the electromagnetic field of the universe is an experience. Before you can call it an electromagnetic field, there has to be some kind of knowing. There has to be some kind of experience, whether it's a perceptual experience, cognitive experience, understanding, whatever. But in the absence of an experience, there is no experience of existence. So, if we say death is the absence of experience, then death doesn't exist. Okay, how can you have an experience of something that is not experienceable? Okay, existence by definition is experience of existence. And so in our case, in humans, that experience is a changing qualia matrix, given a storyline and a meaning. And the person who's identifying with that storyline is what we call me. Me. If I say, where are you? Who are you? You say, I'm Deepak and I'm here in La Jolla. Okay, now that itself is a storyline. Okay, because when you go inside my body, you won't find something called me. Okay, you go outside my body, you won't find that either. So that which I call me can't be found ever. Okay, now, these days a lot of people are talking about out-of-body experiences, this, that, and the other. The fact is we can't explain an in-body experience either. So we can't explain an in-body experience. There can be only two conclusions. One is we are not inside the body. Okay, so you can't find the person inside the body because the person is not inside the body. And the second is that there is no such thing as a person either. The person itself is a changing experience. Okay. So what happens is we create words for forms and phenomena. Then the word overtakes the experience of the form and the phenomena. So, I take a piece of, I hold an apple in my hand. And what is the experience? It's an experience of smell, taste, texture, the crunching of the sound of when I chew it. It's the taste, it's the smell, it's the texture, it's the color, it's the shape. That's the experience. The word apple is a collection of sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, thoughts, period. The word apple is a collection for that qualia matrix. Qualia means qualities of experience. We should not confuse qualia with esoteric ideas. Qualia simply means quality of awareness. That's it, quality of experience. And so an apple becomes a word that is substituted for the quality of experience. So who's Deepak Chopra? Deepak Chopra is also a changing experience, but the word overtakes the reality of the changing experience, which is nothing other than an intermittent stream of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, which are modified forms of consciousness. That's it. So consciousness is knowing itself as that, as that, as that, as this, as all this. Then it gives it names, and then it creates what we now call a subject-object split, which is totally artificial. There's me and there's everything else. Okay, but in fact, this me and everything else is in constantly evolving, self-regulating, unified wholeness of experience. And furthermore, the reality is such a trickster. It's a magical lie. The whole thing is a magical lie. Okay, you say, okay, I am my body. Then I have to say, which body am I? Okay, I'm this body. But what is this body now made of? Well, if I want to go through constructs, it's made of atoms, molecules, force fields, electromagnetic energy held to the earth with gravity, held together through these chemical bonds and all these. These are constructs. But now I've created something called an identity, Deepak Chopra, and this world. And I fear that this entity is going to disappear and this world is going to remain. Okay. But in fact, both Deepak Chopra and this world are an evolving qualia matrix, which is self-regulating. And that qualia matrix is, unfortunately, not the total story. Okay. It's a human experience. You say, what about squirrels and rabbits and trees and plants and all this? Well, those are part of the human experience. A giraffe doesn't know it's called a giraffe. That's a human construct for that experience. This is a human construct called a person for this experience. This is a construct for this experience. But who or what is having the experience can't be found. Okay? Cannot be found. Which leads to only one or two or three conclusions. Either it doesn't exist. How can then you have an experience without an experiencer? That in itself seems contradiction. Or it doesn't have a form. Because if it had a form, I'd be able to experience it. There is only one thing you can't experience perceptually or cognitively, and that is yourself. What we call the self can't be experienced perceptually or cognitively. It can be sensed as a presence. Sensed as a presence, but it can't be experienced mentally or perceptually as an object. And the reason is it doesn't have a form. Now, this is clear to even, I am now at my age, I am 100% experientially convinced that what we call matter is the biggest illusion. Okay, what we call the physical world is the biggest illusion. It doesn't matter that there are, it doesn't matter that there are 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets. The fact is, the whole thing is a dreamscape in a fictional character called Deepak Chopra. And we are all fictional characters in a collective dreamscape. And our fear comes from the death of the fictional character and the fear that the dreamscape will still be there when the fictional character disappears. But actually, all the fictional characters and the evolving dreamscape are a constantly self-regulating, evolving, uncertain, creative process. That's it, a process. Where is this process occurring? In something that's formless. Now, if you're a materialist, you'll say, oh, it's the quantum vacuum. Well, fine. Even the quantum vacuum is empty. Okay, it has a structure, so to speak, virtual particles. Okay, so whatever this fundamental reality is, which is formless, it does have virtual structures. It has frequency domains of experience. And what we are experiencing is the human frequency domain of experience. All the animals, all the birds, all the bees are part of the human dreamscape. Now, what about their experiences? They are extensions of the virtual reality. Okay. And these days, it's not very difficult to understand right now. I'm seeing you, Maurizio, I'm seeing Zaya, and many people are seeing us all over the world. So where are we located right now? Where are we located right now? And the answer is the experience of you, me, and Zaya is everywhere. Only somebody has to be plugged into that bandwidth of experience. That's it. And that bandwidth is a formless bandwidth. It's a frequency domain which is less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. Because that's all we can experience. We can't experience anything outside that electromagnetic spectrum. You have no access to what we call infrared or microwaves or radio waves or X-rays or ultraviolet or, the vast range. Our acoustic experience is also 1%. Everything that we call experience through the senses is actually the information going inside is quantum. It's nothing. It's invisible. Where is the experience happening? It's not happening in the brain because the brain itself is an experience. So where is experience happening right this moment? It's happening everywhere. And it is happening nowhere in particular, but everywhere in general. And all experience is entangled with every other experience. Okay, so even time, what we call past, future, and present, are entangled in what we call now. There will never be an experience that is not now. There will never be a point of arrival which is not now. So now contains past, present, and future experiences in superposition. Now, once we understand that, then birth and death exist in superposition. Okay, they exist. You can't have a perceptual snapshot. Let's try this. I'm looking at you. I look at the microphone. Then I look at you. Then I look there. Okay. In between every snapshot is me but not me as a person, me as the formless being that modifies itself as that snapshot, as this snapshot, as that snapshot, as this snapshot. It's the presence of formless being that gives continuity to essentially what is an intermittent stream of qualia. That's it. And then humans create a story. Me, other animals, universe, starscapes, ocean, this, that, all modified aspects of myself. The mind is a changing stream of thoughts and emotions, which are modifications of consciousness. Okay. Objects are changing stream of perceptions, which are modifications of consciousness. The only constant is this formless thing, and this formless thing is not a thing. It's the space between every form and phenomena. And every form is actually a phenomenon in that it is the arising and subsiding of sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, thoughts. And as soon as they arrive, they subside. Just like the breath, it arises, it's known, it subsides. Sensations arise, they are known, they subside. Perceptions arise, they are known, they subside. In the middle of all these is formless being, which is not only present in the snapshots of experience, but also in between the experience. And the human formless aspect of that structureless, structured emptiness creates a storyline. And that storyline creates all the problems. I'm going to die. Okay, a construct based on false identity, because when you say who is going to die, what is going to die, you can't find that thing that is going to die. You can't find it, and the reason you can't find it, it's formless. And the reason, if it's formless, it has to be infinite. And if it is infinite, it is not in time. So spaceless, timeless, borderless, fundamental, irreducible, without cause, eternal. What the Upanishads say, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it. It is unborn and it is not subject to death. Okay. So what is identity? Do I have a physical identity? I can't find it. You know, every night before I go to sleep, I meditate on my death, but I also meditate on my life. So what I do is I close my eyes, I witness my life as far back as I can go, you know, to the moment of my grandfather's death, maybe, or I'm living with my grandparents. Then I progressively go through this kid who was in high school, then who was in college, who went to medical school. And honestly, I can't relate to any of those guys. I mean, there's nothing with those guys that I can relate to. The Deepak Chopra went to high school or went to college or went to medical school. I cannot relate to that character. Physically, there's not one atom in this body that was there now. Mentally, there's not one idea now that I have actually agreement with, which I had ideas then. My emotions are different. My personality is different. And it has been every day evolving. So when I start to say who or what is having this experience, this entity that is having the experience cannot be found. Now, here's a furthermore understanding. Once you start to totally understand this, then you realize that in every snapshot of experience, both the self and the other are created at the moment of experience. So the seer and the scenery are a product of seeing. Seeing is the fundamental activity of consciousness, or hearing, or touching, or tasting, or smelling, or thinking, or feeling, or imagining, or whatever you can think, mental or perceptual. That's the fundamental activity. After that, Deepak and the universe are constructs. And the seer and the scenery, what we call the individual seer and the individual scenery at that moment, is born in the moment of seeing. In the absence of seeing, there's no seer and there's no scenery, period. So what's there? What's there? In the absence of seeing, in the absence of hearing, in the absence of tasting, touching, smelling, thinking, feeling, imagining, reflecting, what is there? Whatever it is, it's not an experience. In the regular sense that we talk about experience. So what's there? What is there is formless, and those of us who have actually spent hours and hours and hours in meditation and reflection and inquiry and actually waking up in deep sleep and waking up in dreams, we understand what's left when all experience is taken away is infinite, formless, has infinite possibilities, which means infinite modes of knowing, species specific, culture specific, infinite knowers and infinite objects known, but those objects are not objects. They are just the modifications of pure consciousness modifying itself as seer and scenery in everything that we can say is sentient. So what is the body? The body is an instrument for experience. That's it. I don't even think of it as something that belongs to me because it doesn't. The body is recycled earth, water, and air, period. Mind is nothing that belongs to me. It's recycled everybody else's constructs. Okay. Emotions. Can I say this is my anger, or this is my love, or this is my grief, or this is my... The only thing that belongs to me, by the way, is a story. And the story is the attachment to a bandwidth of experience, most of which we don't even remember. If I said, do you remember your 14th birthday? No, unless it was something very dramatic, right? Like I remember my grandfather's death, okay? If I ask you, do you remember when you learned how to speak English or French? You don't, but you're speaking it. If I ask you, do you remember when you learned how to walk? No, but you're walking. The other day, 2 years ago, I was in New York and I was going by, it was winter, and going by Rockefeller Center, I saw the skating rink. Okay, so I picked up a pair of skates and I said, let me try it. And, I was skating. When's the last time I skated? When I was 14 years. So the brain that learned how to skate is not the brain that's skating right now. Not one atom. In the deeper reality, even the brain is a story. There's no such thing. Okay, atoms, molecules, force fields, particles, these are all stories, human constructs for modes of knowing and experience a narrow bandwidth of activity, which is less than 1%, and it's a lie. My sensory experience tells me Earth is flat. Nobody believes that anymore. My senses tell me the ground I'm standing on is stationary. I know it's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. My senses tell me this is solid, this is shape, color, texture, borders. It's a magical lie. The whole thing is made out of nothing. Okay, nothing is the only reality, and nothing is the immeasurable potential of all that was, is, and ever will be. So, given that, what is my identity? Who dies? What dies? There is no such thing. All identity is provisional. All identity. This is my current identity. It's not the identity of Deepak at the age of 14 or Deepak when he's ready to leave this planet. This is my current identity. It's totally provisional. In fact, it's so provisional that this wasn't my identity yesterday. Because since yesterday, I have some new ideas, new thoughts, new revelations. Who is that which is having those ideas? That is not a person. Okay, it's formless. It's infinite. And then the sudden thing that occurred to me as I was thinking about this is, even though I have no absolute identity other than pure consciousness, the only identity I have, which is absolute, is pure consciousness, which is infinite, formless, self-regulating, self-evolving, synchronistic, non-locally correlated, unpredictable, creative, the source of intention, attention, but unimaginable, unconceptualizable. Infinite cannot be conceptualized, but it knows itself through finite experiences. It knows itself through finite experiences. So the interesting thing is, even though I don't have any identity as such, I can choose identity and make it an experience. I can choose the identity today that I'm a writer, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a child, I'm a doctor, I'm a speaker. These are roles I play, and it may be my destiny to play an infinity of roles, but I'm not the roles I'm playing. I'm the awareness that is modifying these cells in these roles. So I can choose my identity. I can choose my identity as a skin encapsulated ego squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime. I can choose an archetypal identity, a deity that is symbolically representing a bigger range of experiences than my narrow bandwidth of experience. I can assume a shamanic identity, which includes the experiences of all sentient beings. I can choose an identity inside that says, I don't believe in the physical constructs because I'm formless, infinite, dimensionless, and now in superposition of all possibilities. And ultimately, I can choose the absolute identity, the non-changing identity that we can give a name to, but we don't have to. The presence in which all knowers, all modes of knowing, all things known arise and subside because consciousness has only one business: being conscious. Consciousness is only one activity: being conscious. And how does it become conscious of itself? Through the experience of the other. Okay, what we call the other. So as we go deeper and deeper, we say there is no such thing as death. But it makes life possible so we can have experience. And life is not the opposite of death. Birth is the opposite of death. Life is the continuum of birth and death. Both are necessary. Okay? You can't have an off without an on. You can't have an on without the off. I mean, try it with your switch. Okay? And there's no sensation that is permanently on. If I put my hand on your thigh and I don't move it, after a while you won't know it's there. Then I move it, you might say, what the heck are you trying to do? Okay? So all experience is onning and offing of pure consciousness. The rest is a story. What we call the body, now again, without going to, I do not like to repeat traditional concepts, even from the greatest wisdom traditions, because then what you happen is they're so profound, but if you repeat them too much, they become cliches and then they don't seem that profound. But you see, in the Eastern wisdom traditions, the physical body is called the recycling of karma. It's very interesting, and actually people don't fully get what they mean because it doesn't come from experience. It comes from reading Upanishads or this or that, read the literature, read Ramana Maharishi, see what the Buddha said, see what Adi Shankara said, and then you come up with the construct. Body is the recycling of karma, not understanding what it means, okay? What is this body? Think right now of a very unpleasant experience right now. Close your eyes and think of an intensely unpleasant experience. You'll see your body goes into pain right now. Okay. Think of a very joyful experience, falling in love, ecstasy, transcendence, and your body immediately becomes formless. There's no experience. Okay. So on and off go together. You can't have form without the formless. You can't have the formless without the form. They're complementarities in the same way as space-time are complementarities, or mass energy are complementarities, or mind-body are complementarities, and they're all human constructs. Okay, the only reality is timeless being, and it is full of joy because it has no agenda. It's not worried about death. It's not anticipating the future. It's not regretting the past and not creating a storyline. The moment you have a storyline, you feel the body. Moment you have no storyline, you go back into formless. So as long as you're willing to detach from your provisional stories, you have conquered the fear of death, because what dies is a story, and a very provisional story which has no fundamental reality. Doesn't matter who you are, Mahatma Gandhi, Napoleon, Muhammad, Jesus, except for a few, 2-3 generations from now, nobody will remember who Maurizio is or who Zaya is or who Deepak is. And actually, nobody knows who Jesus was or Buddha was or Muhammad was. It's all a storyline in our collective consciousness right now. Go beyond all storylines, you have conquered death. And there is an identity there, but it's not a person. It's infinite and formless and joyous. You know, in India, again, cliche, Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means eternal existence. Not defining existence as this, existence as fundamental. Sat, Chit, pure consciousness. Ananda, joyful. Why is it joyful? It hasn't attached itself to a storyline, a human storyline. So that's all I have to say. There's no death.
Wow. So if there is no death, then does it really matter whether we die consciously or live consciously? Does it matter?
Matter to whom? Matter to whom?
Okay, yes, I hear you. Why the wisdom traditions talk about dying consciously? Why is that? Like, why do we even need to even be concerned whether we die in
when you go to a movie
in bliss?
Okay, so when you go to a movie, you like the good scenes and you avoid the bad scenes. And this is the nature of evolution, that is moving into expressions of creativity, imagination, abstraction, and diversity. This is, if you look at evolution, this is what is happening. Which is, forget for the moment Darwinian mechanistic explanations, which are going to fall and are falling right now. But when you look at evolution, it's the expression of maximum diversity. Look at nature, everything. And look at the genetic information of our planet, the microbiome, maximum diversity, maximum creativity, and constant evolution into different forms and phenomena. But at the same time, entropy hanging there saying, hold it. Because if the on was so rapidly on without the absence of the off, the universe would rapidly expand, metaphorically speaking, into the heat death of absolute zero. And if there was only entropy, it wouldn't even begin. Okay, so this is a balance: entropy, creativity, life, death, all this. And always life is ahead. Entropy is a little behind, but that makes the play. So, what do we call the play in Eastern wisdom traditions? Leela. And what do we call the illusion? Maya. Maya is the goddess. And actually, Maya is a very interesting word, because Maya also means matrix. It also means matter. It also means meaning. It also means music. It also means mathematics. It also means time. It also means measurement. We measure the infinite as the finite experience, and we bamboozle ourselves into the play of consciousness, which is illusion. It's play. That's all it is. Okay, so the blissful death is upgrading the illusion, painful death is downgrading the illusion. So you can choose the illusion you want.
Oh gosh.
Um,
Wow.
um,
It's just, what do you add to it?
No, I think, Maurizio, at the end, what happens is you say, what if I don't buy into anybody's story, Jesus' story, Ramana Maharishi's story, or anyone? Where do I find myself going? And then you look at the stories and then you find validation. Otherwise, every belief becomes a cover up for insecurity, including scientific stories. They are cover ups for insecurity.
Yeah.
The only security comes from having direct experience, and then knowledge based on that direct experience tells you that actually this is imagine for a second, 1 second, that you were this absolute being called God, which is a concept, right? God with an image is a concept. Absolute being is not a concept because it is the source of all concepts, okay? But imagine you were this absolute. I wouldn't change a thing in this universe. Maximum diversity with sinners and saints, divine and diabolical, pain and suffering, birth and death, pleasure, joy, anger, frustration, ecstasy, transcendence. Why would you change this? The infinite must be allowed to remain infinite. Otherwise, what's the point of the play?
So really surrender to whatever arises, accept whatever arises. If there is fear of death, surrender to that, right?
Maybe. But I've been thinking a lot about this. There's one clue here which solves the whole thing. And that clue is there will never be an experience which is not now. Never be an experience which is not now. That's number one. And number two, now is not a moment in time. Because the moment there is time, then it's not now. Okay? So past, present, and future exist in superposition in now. And now simply means no resistance, no anticipation, no regrets. Presence of being.
Yeah.
Presence of being. And you find then you can choose the stories and you can choose the identities, because they're all, even identity is a story. But it's an experience story. It doesn't matter that the earth appears flat and I seem to have a solid body. I can walk on it, right? So it's an experience, even though it's a total illusion. This is an illusion, that is an illusion, total. This is made of nothing, that is made of nothing. And the true nature of that and this is we are both formless, eternal beings.
Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you,
thank
Deepak.
you so
thank
much.
you, thank you,
for
thank you,
this
thank you.
beautiful download and wisdom.
It's always like
Thank you.
Spending time with you is always this, like you're taking in a ride on on a rocket to the universe and back, and all of a sudden, like everything, I'm totally at peace, at ease. I hear every word you say, and I'm so confused at the same time, which is the perfect state we should aim, which is the perfect state to receive the now.
It should end with Rumi's quote, exchange your cleverness for bewilderment. Bewilderment is a holy experience.
Beautiful.
This is a beautiful closing. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
And we'll see you all again very soon to
the next conversation.
Wasn't it incredible?